Support for this show comes from Lead Quizzes. Lead Quizzes helps you easily set up high-converting quizzes to capture and qualify leads for your business. Visit leadquizzes.com/podcast to get a 14-day free trial today.
Everything that we put into place from a productized service angle now is the bane of our existence. Like now we're trying to get people to think bigger and out of that box and not be task-oriented. Now you got to change the business altogether again, right? And that's great. I can't ever envision running this business where things were just the same forever.
From Lead Quizzes, it's Journey to Seven Figures, a show about entrepreneurs and the stories behind how they grew their business to seven figures and beyond. We cover the good, the bad, and the ugly, and the lessons they learned along the way. So welcome back to Journey to Seven Figures. Today I'm interviewing Justin Gray, founder and CEO of LeadMD. LeadMD is a bootstrapped marketing agency with a focus on transforming marketing into a revenue engine. They've helped over 3,000 high growth and enterprise clients such as Forbes and eBay. Having started in 2009, they've implemented over half of the Marketo user base, and last year they generated $5.6 million in sales. Very excited to interview Justin today and learn about his journey to seven figures. Justin, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Awesome. All right, Justin, well, let's jump in. How did you get started with LeadMD?
Oh God, how did I get started with LeadMD? By accident is probably the most concise way to put that. So I have been in marketing. I have my degree in marketing, have been operating in organizations of varying size, and normally in a pretty boring manner. I think that's kind of also indicative of the marketing profession. Finally got my break to operate within a startup in 2006 and kind of really had my eyes opened as to what marketing actually should look like. It's kind of the birthplace of a lot of interesting concepts that we now hold true just as in any marketing department, right? Marketing with its own software platform and marketing automation, using CRM for database marketing, email marketing. So a lot of those concepts kind of really started to congeal around that time. And so I used those to create what I would consider to be a best-in-class sales and marketing engine there. I ran sales and marketing for them, worked my way up to a vice president, took an ownership stake in the company, had an exit of my equity within that organization, and kind of didn't know what the hell I was going to do next. And so a couple of people reached out to me and asked if I could build something similar for them and their organization. And that's the building blocks of LeadMD.
Awesome. So that was around 2009 where you just started getting some referrals and just taking on some service work.
Yep, absolutely. I had my spare bedroom. I was running 3 different organizations that I would kind of consider myself a fractional CMO, but then also 100% of their operations layer, which is super difficult to find. You don't often find someone at the marketing leadership level that understands how things work and can actually implement systems, make them scalable, and do the day-to-day outbound campaigning. And so that was really kind of my claim to fame. And so I started with 3 clients doing just that.
Okay, so what was that like then? Did you have some productized services, or you're just doing whatever they needed, or what was that like in the early days?
When the first person reached out, I had no idea how to price anything. If I'm remembering correctly, I think I put time and materials on it. It was just hey, this is what I'm going to need for an implementation of a stack. And then this is what I'm going to need in an ongoing manner to support that on an operations level. And so it was really loose in the beginning. And pretty quickly, I found out that I needed to productize those services and make them consistent because I was having a hard time just balancing my time throughout the day as well.
Okay. And so at the time you're using Marketo and Salesforce?
Yep. I just took what I knew and came to market supporting those systems.
Okay, awesome. And so Marketo, for people listening, if you're not aware what that is kind of like an Infusionsoft or something that helps do marketing automation just for usually bigger clients.
Yep, mid to enterprise.
Yep. Okay, so you got these 3 clients. Tell me what starts to happen after that. You start to figure out how to productize your service, and what do you do to get more clients?
Yeah, so even with those 3, it became evident pretty quickly that I was going to need some help. And so I brought my brother on as a part-time employee, kind of running some of that, teach him the systems, let him execute against the client campaign so I could focus more on evaluating analytics, translating that into strategy, meeting with the executives within those organizations. And then we started to get more interest. In the beginning, we just grew through referrals. So a lot of that early referral traffic was just based on the work that we were doing for these organizations. And obviously that's great from a low cost of sales perspective, but it was also really all over the board. One individual could have been running a software company. The other organization could have been business or professional services. Someone else could have been running a retail org. And so it was really difficult to kind of have that scatter focus. So we had to get more focused and then really determine the personas that we wanted to support going forward. And once we did that, we started to kind of hit a groove with folks that knew about Marketo. A lot of people buying that technology as a way to overhaul marketing, which is not a good strategy whatsoever. In fact, it's not a strategy. It really just became like, hey, you bought this. Do you know what you're going to do with it? And so we back them all the way up to determining a sales and marketing plan, creating those playbooks, and then implementing them.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Something with like referrals is like you're kind of at the whim of whoever comes your way and you're not really choosing your customer type. So you figured out pretty early you need to like pick your personas. You want to talk through like maybe how you focused on those personas and what you're going to do for them?
Yeah, I mean, obviously starting with your customer data is a great place to start for personas. Like what clients do we love working with? Which one of those are highly profitable? Are we doing repeatable things for them that we could do for other people? And then where are we seeing difficulty? And for us, size of organization was pretty important to focus on. Early on, we got a lot of entrepreneurs or CEOs that were interested in kind of this fractional service that we could provide. And if there wasn't some element of marketing layer or someone that could at least focus a good amount of their time helping us understand the goals of that organization, then it was pretty unsuccessful every single time. So we had to really focus on the people that were willing to make an investment within marketing and didn't think it was just kind of that overnight lead machine. Like that was an early question that we got a lot, which is where are the leads? Well, these come from demand and we've got to spend money to go get those net new names. Then we have to nurture them and warm them up. And then at some point they'll be ready to buy. There was still a lot of immaturity in the market about what marketing really was at that point. In fact, there still is.
So that makes sense. Maybe if there's agencies listening or anybody like thinking these are the types of clients I want, like how did you bridge that gap between this is what I want and then going out and finding them and getting them to sign up?
Yeah, so I think that's where partner strategy can really come in. And for a lot of people, partners are a black hole of time and expense, right? Like you get to a certain revenue point and you bring on this VP of biz dev and no one really knows what they do. They have conversations with all these different types of organizations and maybe some of them work out and some don't. When you're a bootstrapped organic business, like you can't afford to spend time anywhere that's not going to yield some element of result, right? And so partner for us immediately meant taking a more concerted approach to the technologies that we were supporting. So is Marketo the right platform for us to grow? And if it is, how can we get ingrained within their processes? So we're not selling every single customer, but they're starting to refer customers over to us that know they need additional help. They need to be able to succeed with that technology. So very early on, we focused on that organization and really became embedded with them. And we've shifted that strategy many times over the years because they've obviously gone public. They've been pulled back private by private equity. And so there's just a lot of winds of change that come with that process. But certainly focusing on the partner has been one of our keys to success.
Okay, so what are some strategies behind that? Because I think there's a lot of areas like that, whether it's you partner with someone like that, you go find a traffic source that you want to go with, but to actually like get really good results and not just be another like partner listed on there, how did you make that effective?
Yeah, so we really focused on that strategy in a two-pronged sense. So number one, at the executive level within their organization, we wanted to be a formal partner. We wanted to gain certification. We wanted to really stand out there from a best-in-class perspective, right? So not just folks that had seen Marketo one or two times, but really folks that were experts in that area. And then we also went from a ground-up perspective and kind of a grassroots focus. We embedded ourselves within their sales teams. We made friends at that level. We rewarded those individuals for the referrals they were sending over to us. We were out in their office all the time, face to face. There's just a lot of, I think, approaching that on both ends of the spectrum and then working ourselves to the middle.
Okay. All right. So using that strategy, you guys figured out like your personas, you found a way to like start getting referrals from partners. How far did that kind of take you before like you ran into some other issues in your business?
I mean, if you talk to anyone who runs a software organization, there's a reason why they don't want to be a services org, right? It's inherently incredibly unscalable. It's challenging because there's always changes taking place in the market and you have to stay up on all those changes, but you also need to spend your time billing these clients. So it's a really difficult struggle. So I think a services business provides a lot of unique challenges that other businesses simply don't. Not that those businesses don't have their points of uniqueness, but there's always something changing within our industry, whether it's a new feature being added into Marketo as a software, or we're taking on a new partner that we want to support, or our clients, they're not seeing success only at the tactical level. They need help on the strategy side as well. And so our business has evolved at multiple different inflection points. I would say there's at least one of those points every single year.
Okay. So I guess like you cracked into the enterprise clients. That was who you targeted. That's who's going to use Marketo.
Yeah, I think by choosing Marketo, a software that had a high ACV and it had an inherent customer base that was mid and enterprise, we were able to kind of look for that signal and say, you have bought or you are purchasing that piece of technology. And therefore, you tended to fit our persona. Still, there are a lot of folks that buy Marketo that don't fall into B2B SaaS, which is where a lot of our experience centers around. So we had to make a decision at that point as well. Do we want to support these other areas? Are they going to be a long-term strategy for us? Are they worth the initial revenue?
Okay. Awesome. And then, so one thing that's interesting, Justin, I know like you were one of the first kind of like earlier service companies to start putting your pricing on your website. So you maybe want to walk through kind of that strategy and how you guys started figuring out your pricing model as you matured?
Yeah, so there was a really intentional strategy behind that. And that's the market was super immature. Obviously, we all know like pricing on a site is somewhat of an SMB strategy, right? Like a lot of people want to know what they're buying if they're able to buy it online. They want to know how much it costs, and that makes sense. As you get more into the enterprise, that tends to kind of dovetail off. Whether the organization was enterprise or SMB at the time, they were buying like an SMB. And that's why we chose to put our pricing on the site. They were somewhat immature. They didn't understand what services meant as it pertained to marketing automation or CRM, and they needed some sort of weather vane north. And that's what we were looking to give them. Like, these are the different ways that we engage. Back then it was Embark, which is an implementation, a refresh, meaning you had it, but it wasn't working for you, and extended management, which was our retainer service or our fractional staff log service. And so each one of those needed to be defined, and we needed to put some sort of a marker on it to say, this is at a minimum what it's going to cost you to engage with us. So we did carve out a lot of the low end of the market by saying this is somewhat expensive. And we also allowed the higher end of the market to define an expectation. So that started to hurt us within our growth cycle at some point, but it did us a real solid for a long time.
Okay. And to give context to people listening, I think some of those price points were like 14 grand or something to get started.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
And we still have some of those up on the site. I think we like something that is advertised for 14 grand right now probably started off like at 8K, maybe even below. So obviously we've evolved as the market's appetite, the definition of services has evolved.
All right. So like with this partner model, like how many clients were you building? Like what was that getting you to like revenue wise?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of started to rise on the first wave of B2B marketing automation. And so within a year and a half, we had broken the $1 million mark. We had started to experience some of the challenges that come with that, which is obviously how do we train people to be consistent? So we changed our service offerings when those points of inflection happened. But in the beginning, it's easy to double your business, right? Like, especially when you have zero revenue. So when you get around that year or two mark, then it becomes a lot more difficult to really double a business. And you have to focus on things beyond just winning clients and pricing and even estimating projects, right? It really got into delivery and consistency and keeping those clients from a lifetime value perspective. So a lot of those complexities really start to arise in that 12 to 24 month time frame. And that's where a lot of the tweaks and changes in our business started to emerge.
Okay, those are great. So you mentioned a few things I'd love to jump into: delivery, consistency, keeping clients. So maybe the keeping clients and delivery tie together. Why don't we start there? Like, how did you manage expectations? How did you deliver consistent results for people, especially when you're doing like, I believe, a lot of custom work for these clients?
Yeah, and you're right. There's a high degree of customization that comes in when you're working from client to client, especially in the enterprise. So we literally productize services. That doesn't mean that we put a name on our implementation and called it such. Like, we defined what the product was, what the milestones that went into that product were, the tasks that rolled up to that milestone were, and we included a default value of time. Like, at the minimum, what is this going to take? And what are the dependencies involved? What do we have to do before that? It allowed us to do two things. Number one, consistently train our consultants, which is a big problem in any professional services environment. And number two, provide a baseline scope that was going to be accurate. And we knew as a result, we were going to be able to deliver consistent outcomes and outputs. So that was a big process for us. It's really time consuming. It's a heavy lift. And I would consider it to be absolutely one of our successes in those early days. In fact, a lot of the partners we work with these days will actually have us come in and help them define their professional service offering. Certainly if they're in kind of that early stage software status where they've got enough clients and now it's time for them to create consistency, where you're not just trying to make everyone happy, that's a really great time to formalize your professional services offering.
Okay. Could you give us an example of like something that you productized and how you're able to put that in place?
Yeah. So like, let's take a standard implementation of a platform, and we'll use Marketo because we've mentioned their name like 24 times already. So like when you implement Marketo, you have a couple baseline things. Number one, you have to do something we call technical setup and pre-launch, like all the plugging in, integrate it with your CRM, make sure that your fields are mapped, make sure that you understand how data looks within CRM, make the connection, sync the two together. Like that all fell under a technical setup and pre-launch service pack. Had defined milestones and tasks. Great. Lead scoring, another item that's absolutely critical, right? Like we had a lead scoring service pack. We then had a campaigning service pack. Those kind of formed the epicenter. And then we had different versions of that product depending upon the other features or the different plans that you wanted to purchase. So it really allowed us to define for that client, okay, at the end of this, you're going to have CRM and marketing automation talking together. You're going to have lead scoring, campaigning, you're going to have a sales process, and a handoff from marketing to sales. And at the baseline, that's what most of our clients wanted. And so that consistency, I mean, immediately it cut our scope of work time down from like 3 days to inside of an hour. We could just drag something off the shelf and we've got something to show. So,
okay, awesome. Yeah. So from a sales perspective, you're not having to like step away for 3 days and put together a proposal and drag team members into it. So it sounds like you pretty much, probably 50% or 90% or whatever, and then you add a couple of things to it.
correct. Yeah. Always that little, we tried to make the 90-10 rule the opposite of what it normally is in services, which is like 10% template, 90% customization. We really focus on flipping that from the very beginning.
Okay, awesome. So I'm sure that improved your sales, like being able to sell people, like you keep people excited, that kind of thing. But you also mentioned training. So now that you have this in place, it's a lot easier to train people and get them to get consistent results. So why don't we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that even bleeds into hiring, right? Like we could now go to someone and ask them, hey, if you had to perform these actions or show me that you can perform these actions, and we would know immediately how mature are they going to be towards delivering implementation services, or maybe they're a better fit for retainer, which is a little bit looser in terms of definition and scope. So it really helped us bring on the right people. And then, of course, fill in the gaps within their expertise, because early on, you couldn't put marketing automation in a job title. People wouldn't even know what it meant. Nowadays, there's a lot of ecosystem built around that platform. Back then, it was the Wild West. We were hiring marketing directors and training them to be consultants.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so why don't we back it up then? To go back from training, let's go back to hiring. So what's your guys' like hiring process to bring people on, where you do have very complex stuff, you do have a lot of training that needs to go into it for them to be successful?
Yeah, I think the key there is we've never stopped hiring for fundamental traits and personalities. And if you talk to any founder, there's always a point where you can't be involved in every interview. You can't take everyone out for a beer or for dinner and get the entire team's input. And that's the point where you have to have your hiring practices really nailed down. And early on we tried to hire for skill. Really bad idea. Skills can be taught, they can be augmented, but someone's personality traits cannot. We want that individual that's going to go the extra mile. They've got that empathy element to them where they're focused on making that client successful. They've got that desire to be a little bit better every day than the previous day. And all of those traits that we started looking for became the core values of the organization. And they weren't things like honesty and passion. Like you have to have that to bring you on, right? Like, I'm like, oh, you're dishonest? Okay, I'll give you a shot and see if it works out.
Yeah.
Those are fundamentals. And so the true traits that we were hiring for became the core values of the organization. We can hire and fire against it. And we know that no matter how large we get, we're going to train our hiring teams to focus on those elements.
Okay, so what were like a few of the really important core values you hired against?
Yeah, so I mentioned one of them, which is, we're better than yesterday. And I think that's really important because we would have all these interviews and we'd talk to the practitioner and they owned marketing ops or marketing within their organization. We'd ask them like, what's the coolest thing that you implemented lately? And they'd say, oh, it's really hard to get things done in the org. I don't have a lot of extra time. It's like, red flag, done. Like the people that we were talking to that were truly meeting this core value were the people that were breaking things daily. And they were saying, I had this lead scoring methodology in place, but it was converting at too low of a rate. I tried something new. I worked with my sales team to make that happen. So really important for us. We over me is another element. Like, are you considering the group before you're considering yourself? A lot of that manifests itself in like training other people and not keeping information siloed, because that's very easy to do, certainly when you're in a new space.
And that's probably really important for you as well, because I'm sure there's a lot of like knowledge that's built within the organization that needs to be dispersed, huh?
Yeah, a ton. someone that's graduating from a consultant to a senior or a director in our world, like they have to take all of that client knowledge. Like, how do people react? How do they want to be talked to? What's important on a kickoff call? Any of those elements that are only possible to really learn through experience, you have to pass that down. So if you're not focused on that, you just get these silos and everyone's kind of out for themselves. And it's not an environment that we want to have.
Okay. What's another example?
Transparency. So we believe in transparency is, I think, the fourth one that I mentioned here. Everyone should know how they're impacting revenue. Everyone should know how we're measuring them. And we should know how they're measuring us. How are we doing as a leadership team? And just having that one-on-one connection between the C-level and the consulting level or anyone within the organization. So we really do view that ability to have an open door as critical. And then our final is probably the one that's a little bit more of a no-brainer than anyone, but we have fun in everything that we do. If we're not having a good time and this has stopped being fun for someone, we better talk about it pretty soon, because everyone that I employ could go work somewhere else immediately. Like, these are skill sets that are in such high demand. If you're not having a good time, why not go somewhere else? And so that's super critical as well.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I don't think I've covered core values like in this much depth on any other episodes, but I think it's awesome instead of like, especially if people haven't set them up yet, it's so important as far as driving hiring decisions, like who you're going to keep, that kind of thing, versus like, just writing them down on paper and never using them. So,
yep. And they're written down on a lot of paper within our organization. Like, we have them on the walls, we have physical representations of them. We kick off our all hands meeting with recognitions of the values. So like, who do you want to nominate that's been awesome on one of our 5 core values? And so it's just making that very actionable and visible as well, I think.
Okay, great. We'll get back to the show in a minute, but first a quick thanks to our sponsor, Lead Quizzes. If you want to grow your business to 7 figures and beyond, you must learn how to generate leads predictably. When I first started my business, lead generation felt like riding a roller coaster. I would have huge sales months and then months with nothing. This happened because I relied solely on referrals and networking to grow my business. Predicting growth and investing in the future were frightening because I didn't have control over my lead generation. That was before we created Lead Quizzes. Now I predictably generate leads in my sleep and have stopped worrying about where the next sale will come from. Top marketers like Neil Patel and Lewis House have used Lead Quizzes to increase their lead capture by up to 500%. Think about it. Quizzes are fun, engaging, and you can offer personalized feedback in exchange for your quiz taker's contact information. Lead Quizzes is a software that allows you to set up high-converting quizzes quickly without having to hire an expensive programmer. In fact, our users have generated over 3 million leads for their businesses. Take control of your lead generation today and start your 14-day free trial by going to leadquizzes.com/podcast. So you're hiring these people, you found people that have like the right kind of like personality, they fit your core values, but they may not have the skill sets yet. So how do you take them now? You have some of these productized services that you guys are trying to sell. How do you train them up to be able to deliver those?
Yeah, and the one thing that has shifted about our business is we are able to hire for more of the skills than we were back in the day. Number one, we have more money. That always helps. I have a bad saying that a lot of people will probably give me bad comments around, but like, money solves a lot of things. And so you can go out there and you can hire better talent. Also, the marketplace has just matured further as well. And so there is more of that shared knowledge, but training people from an experience perspective is absolutely key. So we've actually created our own LMS and our own curriculum to actually dive in and determine where someone's at within their maturity curve and plug those gaps with the right type of training that they need. So a lot of investment in that area. And we've seen a lot of great results come out of the creation of 6 Bricks and how we use it to onboard our own talent.
Okay, so you guys started putting some marketing courses together. Like, before you even like created that LMS, the learning management software, were you doing something similar before that, before you guys created it?
Manually, right? Like, so a lot of it, when you're starting off, everything is like, sit over my shoulder and watch what I'm doing, and then you go do it, right? Like, there's not a lot of tell, show, do, review going on within that model. So we moved quickly from watch me do it to, hey, I'm going to show you how to do it via these physical trainings or training modules, and then I'm going to show you how to do it, and then you're going to go do it on your own, then we're going to review it together. And we do that all now through the platform, but eventually, in the beginning, it was a manual process, and we had someone that was focused on training our team as part of their job title. So I do think that's critical as well as you're starting to scale up.
Yeah. And I think fundamentally you having these repeatable, like kind of like productized services is critical for that. Because I know with our agency starting out, we didn't have a productized and it was custom everything. And so you can't really train people.
Yeah, this is the great thing about services and professional services. And it might come off like a negative, but this is truly what the business is exciting to me, because everything that we put into place from a productized service angle now is the bane of our existence. Like now we're trying to get people to think bigger and out of that box and not be task oriented. And now you got to change the business altogether again, right? And that's great. I can't ever envision running this business where things were just the same forever. So you hit those milestones. It's like, okay, time and materials and task-based billing is great until you want to do big strategic transformation projects. And then it's like, it's not going to be that defined. You're going to need people that can think out of the box and that can go off script, and we're doing fixed bid work. And so everything changes. And that's what's exciting about business to me.
Okay. All right. So cool. We've covered hiring, we've covered training, we've covered partners. One thing I'm interested, Justin, I know you've done a lot of different types of like lead generation and getting yourself out there. So as you guys have matured and you've gone beyond just referrals and partners, like what are some of the other like marketing lead generation strategies you guys have used that are really successful for you?
Yeah, so we made an early investment within content back when like content marketing was like a new concept and so on. And so we've kept that focus throughout the years, but obviously that's had to evolve with the times as well. Now there's so much content out there, just simply creating it is not enough, right? Like, so now you have to really get targeted around segmentation. You have to create vehicles where someone can come, tell you how they want to engage with your content, and you simply adjust your outbound strategy accordingly. So our marketplace area is something that's always evolving. It's a collection of best practices. You can come in and consume content down certain tracks that interest you. And then we've got a really exciting project coming live here in a couple months where we're taking that to the nth degree. Now you'll be able to consume content and see that you've got kind of this past history. You're almost forming a book or a repository of your own. And so it's always evolving, but I think content marketing has definitely been a key strategy for us.
Okay. I'm interested to hear your perspective on this. When we started out, we started investing in content as well. We weren't getting a lot of traffic from it, but what did work well is like the leads we were getting, it was good at like nurturing those leads and then eventually be opening these emails and then we'd follow up and we'd close people. Was that your similar experience, or how did content work for you in traffic and lead gen?
Yeah, I mean, it really comes down to there are different types of content. I'll give you an example. Like, so we have a blog post that's like our highest performing blog post ever. And it's the 5 questions you should ask your marketing automation hire, right? Completely non-strategic, very tactical. It's aimed at an audience and we get a ton of traffic. We get a ton of conversion off of it. It's great top of funnel content. A lot of our content is, as you're describing, best practices. It moves the buyer through the funnel. It gets them closer to making a decision. It educates them. And that's a completely different type of content. So I think early on, you have to understand that the market is probably less mature than you think they are. And they just want these basic concepts they're struggling to understand. And once they start to get that understanding, then they're ready to kind of come into your buying funnel and be more educated. So it really is about targeting the right content to the right buyer, of course, at the right time.
Okay. And so is organic search like a pretty large source of leads for you guys now?
Yeah, organic is big for us. We don't do a lot of paid. Social is huge for us, LinkedIn in particular. If we put something out on LinkedIn, it's probably going to have 2 or 3x the engagement that we would get natively on our site. And so weaving in next steps into that content is so critical. Even forming conversations. If your viewers know Jason Lemkin, who's the ex-CEO of EchoSign, who now runs SaaStr, great organization for people looking for, how to start a SaaS business, best practices, and so on. Like they take everything that they put on Quora from a Q&A perspective, and they route it back to the website. I mean, that was their early content strategy. So you can really kind of hijack interest and bring that engagement back to your platform once you've built trust and built the following.
Okay. Do you have any examples around that of like how you're getting that engagement on LinkedIn, or what are some things you're doing?
Yeah, it's all our best engaging posts are things that we might share a piece of content, but it's the conversation that comes out of it. So we'll ask a question. We'll start by citing something from the content. 50% of people think they're completely failing with their marketing automation platform. Like, would love to hear why you guys think that is. And then we'll tag thought leaders within the space. And those thought leaders love to engage. You have to kind of have that explicit buy-in from those thought leaders prior to doing this, or it just becomes really spammy. If you've curated a good network of folks that will engage with you on social, and you can tag them and say, hey, I want to get your thoughts on getting this conversation started. That's been really effective for us and a lot of other organizations.
Or maybe you've interviewed them too. And I've seen that ourselves, like with this podcast. Like, for example, we interviewed Rand Fishkin Brandon has over 75,000 followers on LinkedIn. He liked one of our promotional videos and he got 11,000 organic views to the video.
Yep, totally.
And so I think just kind of how their algorithm works, especially like you said, if you're tagging these people that have some relationships, if they go and like it, that's essentially, I think, the same as sharing it on Facebook.
Yep. Yeah, it's going to get into their followers' feeds. They're going to see it. They're going to engage with it. And I mean, the kiss of death in marketing is believing that you are the center of the universe. And to tap into people that have those larger followings, they're doing the same thing. They're tapping into the guy that's the next rung up from them. So it's just so critical to keep your space in perspective and know that you have to go to where the buyer's at.
Okay. All right. So you guys did partners and referrals. You guys did organic and LinkedIn. I'm guessing, like, I just want to be clear, like, as you were going, did you pick one of these channels at a time or were you in all like 4 of them at once?
Yeah, I mean, we were probably in a lot more than these at once. There's a lot of experimentation that goes into marketing. And so, you see someone else doing something and you've got like that competitor FOMO and it's like, well, they're doing paid ads on Google. Should I do that as well? So like we did a lot of, fishing with dynamite in the early days and we kind of figured out what would work for our business. So, you talk to any entrepreneurial CEO, early stage CEO, founder, that's kind of our claim to fame, right? Like I want to do 50 things all at once and let's go do it. And so I think the balance there is trying not to degrade quality for that wide reach. And that's definitely something that I struggle with.
Yeah, I've seen that with a lot of people where it's like the shotgun approach at first, see what works, and then dial into a couple.
Yep.
Like Tufted Needle, for example, is a local business here. They're over 9 figures in their business, but they just pick a couple like channels, like Amazon was first, and then they went into Google Ads, and then they went into billboards, but they did one at a time and went really deep.
Yeah, I mean, most people will tell you it's better to own one thing than have a piece of a lot, except when it comes to investing. But in a business, like you want to own that marketplace before you get into those other rings. And obviously, advice is made to be broken and there's a lot of exceptions to that rule. But I think if you keep that in mind, what am I giving up by going in this different direction and just use that as a decision-making criteria, I think it'll serve you well.
Okay. All right. So did doing outbound marketing or reaching out to people and soliciting business, was that a big thing for you guys?
Pure outbound marketing as it pertains to like something run by marketing automation just doesn't exist. Like you can't email someone unless you have their email. So like events was a big part of our outbound strategy. Like we wanted to grow our database. In the early days, we wanted to own the Marketo database. And so going to their user events, their customer event, those were big items for us early on. And we've kept some of that strategy moving forward, like ABM or account-based marketing is big within B2B right now. And so we'll take some of those ABM events and we'll have a presence there as a means of growing our database for people that are interested. And then we'll use our content marketing strategy to pull them into our ecosphere.
Awesome. And then one thing we haven't talked about too much, like you mentioned briefly, you guys do recurring revenue, but how have you kind of built that into your business to flatten out some of the peaks of when you close big deals?
Yeah, something we didn't touch on earlier is my first 3 clients were all retainer customers. And so we're coming from a 100% retainer background, and that's impossible to continue. You'd really have to have a really narrow focus to get a new engagement that always starts with retainer. But still, 60+% of our revenue always comes from retainer. And that's been a very concerted strategy to convert those one-time projects into ongoing and obviously predictability within the business. So it's a difficult business line in a space where people often view maturity as a stopping point. Okay, we've got all these things implemented, we're good. Marketing is always evolving and always changing. So staff augmentation has really become a large part of our messaging to keep that alive. And that's down to how we compensate our sales reps. Like they have to be selling net new revenue in a balanced way. 60% has to come from retainer, 40% from one-time revenue. So that's how we keep it at that balance through the organization and try to take some of the stress off of the business.
Okay, that's great. And then one more thing before we jump into a couple rapid fire questions. How do you guys really focus? So you guys focus on consistency, but is there anything else you do to really drive lifetime value and keep clients on longer?
Yeah, so I would say, customer sentiment and putting people in the organization towards managing the customer relationship is critical. We have to measure that with an NPS or some sort of finite even scale that we're putting our customers on, but we need those individuals whose job it is to manage that relationship. And in services, a lot of people come on asking for X and you end up performing Y because we want to undertake this huge transformational marketing project, but day 2, everything broke. And can you guys hop in and help us? We get a lot of that kind of misdirection in marketing. So keeping someone focused on the relationship to say, yeah, we can, But remember, this is really important for your business. Let's not lose focus. Is that another project? Is it phasing that initiative out? So having someone that's dedicated towards managing that relationship has really allowed us to do so.
Okay. All right. So you guys have scaled this up to $5.6 million last year. Did you experience a time throughout this business that you thought it would fail?
I don't know, just because of how I am from a mental perspective, that I've ever said wow, we're going to fail. But I'm always saying, wow, we really need to change that. So we are in that constant state of evolution. And we definitely had periods in our business where we'd said, okay, our old way of doing this is done. We all need to huddle around it and solve for that. Marketo going public and then getting acquired was a big period of instability for us, about spanning from 2 years to about a year ago. And so that naturally makes you question, do I have the right people in place? Do we have the right processes? What do we need to change without changing too much? Keeping your finger on the pulse of that business is the job of the executive at the helm. So that's a big part of where I focus my time.
And focusing your time on those changes. And what do you mean by that?
Yeah, just trends in the marketplace, I would say number one. Let's look at what's coming down the pipeline next. New technologies, I mentioned account-based marketing, we saw that coming super early. And so we were able to dive in, do some initial engagements, figure it out, productize it, train our folks on it. And now we're right at the crest of that wave where interest is incredibly high. So that GDPR was kind of one of those other areas, which is a compliance aspect of buyer engagement, if folks don't know what it is. So just kind of keeping your tuned into that radar and making sure that the business is being proactive without reacting too much to things that are naturally going to be up and downs you don't need to worry about.
Okay, awesome. All right. Justin, what's the one thing you did that had the biggest impact on your growth?
Taking a more intentional approach to hiring. Absolutely. Our employees are ambassadors for our brand at this point. And I think there was a period in our company's history where we had sales and we had the go-to-market team, and then we had the folks that were kind of in the background servicing those accounts. That has shifted 100%. Now, by bringing on the right people that are going to be ambassadors, it can be visible within the space, our business expands much more naturally. So just taking that more focused approach to who we bring in has really affected our customer inflow as well.
Okay, great. One more question, Justin. If you could go back in time and start over, what would you tell yourself?
Well, I would tell myself that reselling Marketo Life is going to be a complete failure. It's going to save me about a year and a half. We were definitely a resale model when we came to market. We were wrapping services around it. A lot of channel friction, a lot of lack of definition there, and we wasted a lot of time promoting software that we didn't have the ability to sell. So I think that would certainly be either one or two. My second would certainly be watch out who you partner with. A partnership truly is a marriage. You will never like each other more than the day that you start the business. And so just be really cautious about who you share your shares with.
Okay, great advice. Yeah, I think real quick, the Marketo thing, it was the wrong strategy. Is there anything you do differently to evaluate strategies now that you think would have helped you guys avoid that?
Yeah, it's going to sound cliche, but everything that we do has to be buyer driven. So if we haven't vetted that through some element of MVP or minimum viable product, just to say, is the market going to resonate with this? Do they want this? Is this what they need? That was definitely the solution we thought the market wanted, and we were way off. So it's just so important now, anytime we're productizing anything, to sell it a couple times, let the client know you're in a beta period. It may not do everything you want it to at this point. We'll follow up, we'll make it right, and get their opinion early on and incentivize those clients for participating kind of within that focus group.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I think strategy is so interesting because you can pick the wrong thing and then go down this rabbit hole and waste years of your time and opportunity costs versus just really taking the right time to think through it. And I think you gave a good lens for people to think about, make sure you do the right thing from the beginning.
Yeah, awesome.
All right, Justin, lastly, where can people learn more about you?
LeadMD.com, best place. Links to all of our social channels there. Definitely, I love Twitter. Engage with me on Twitter. I'm at JGrayMatter. And LeadMD is at myLeadMD. So would love to talk to anyone that just wants to have a conversation about marketing.
Awesome. All right, Justin, thank you so much for coming on today. I know I learned a lot, and I know our users are going to love this too.
Thanks, Jeremy. I appreciate it.
Yep. Thanks again for listening to our show this week. If you want to find out more about Justin and the lessons he shared today, or read our show notes, visit leadquizzes.com/18. If you'd like to start generating more leads for your business and get a free trial to Lead Quizzes, go to leadquizzes.com/podcast. Next week, I'll be interviewing Michael Lovich on how he built Real Dose to $40 million in annual revenue. Please subscribe to our show so you don't miss this next episode. I'm Jeremy Ellens, and you've been listening to Journey to Seven Figures.